Hello Mavericks, this is Rob, and hopefully you are laying down somewhere on a couch with your feet up, contemplating your existence, wondering if it's all worth it. Alright, we love our Maverick Psychology Corner. It's a place where you can go to, it is about trading, but it's about you, and it's about me, and it's about human beings and how we're fallible. This is where you go and okay, things, my plan is pretty solid, but I can't seem to follow my plan. So today we're going to be discussing habits. Habits. Okay. Now I have a whole lot to say on this subject. But let's first start off with what is a habit? A habit is a settled tendency or manner of behavior that has become nearly or completely involuntary. Right, now let's talk about that. Involuntary. This is where, again, and this whole session that we're going to be going through, I do not want anyone to think that this is a free pass for all of your bad behavior, not just in trading, but in your life. But you need to understand the mechanics, the brain mechanics of what happens when you form a habit. So the brain, I've done so much reading on this over the last decade. It's fantastic. So it actually takes your prefrontal cortex, which is in the front of your brain. That is the part of your brain that makes logical, rational decisions. It takes your prefrontal cortex, typically somewhere between 4 to 5 seconds, to spool up enough power and information to make a rational decision. However, there are hundreds and hundreds of studies that show most decisions are made before 4 to 5 seconds. How is that possible? What is happening? If it takes your brain 4 to 5 seconds to spool up to make a rational decision, and yet most of the decisions you make are made well before 4 or 5 seconds, how are those decisions being made? Well, they're being made by a program. So what your brain does, because it knows that, hey, this is going to take some time to spool up, and a lot of times we need to act faster than 4 to 5 seconds, we're going to build these programs. We're going to build these programs so when X happens, we have already predetermined how we are going to react. So as you can see here, the decisions that you make most of the time, they are not a decision. They are a program that is run based on, we'll talk about based on what, to where you act without thinking. Again, this is not a get out of jail free card. You are responsible for your actions. But until you understand this, you have no chance of changing behavior whatsoever because you think you're making a decision. You think that you just keep making the wrong decision because you're not disciplined, because you're stupid, because you're whatever it is. That is 100% not true. You're making those decisions because there's a program in your brain that tells you to. And there's two things that affect that. We've all heard this before, nature versus nurture. Which one is the most important? Guess what? They're both important. Now, if you really get into this stuff, and again, I geek out on this stuff so much, this is called genetics and epigenetics. So genetics is nature. You were born with a set of genes. Those genes predispose a lot of what you are right now. Tall, short, blonde hair, black hair, blue eyes, brown eyes, intelligence, things like athletic ability, things like cognitive ability. So there's a lot of things that you were just born with. Your personality is likely, it's not definitive yet, but it's likely to be more nature. Are you an extrovert? Are you an introvert? Do you have strong feelings? Do you not have strong feelings? All of these things are built into you. So nature, this is who you are. This is in your building blocks. This is your DNA. And then there's nurture, which is your epigenetics. These are things that you were taught. These are the things that you observed. These are the things that you've been through and trauma that you've been through. That when you look at genetics, it actually changes your genetic structure. The epigenetics, a new molecule actually hangs onto your DNA strand, and that actually changes your DNA. It's phenomenal, the stuff that we're learning. So it's both. It's both nature and nurture. However, my belief is it is not 50-50. Now, this is just my belief. There's actually studies out there that swing all across the board. Some of them show 80-20, 80% nature, 20% nurture. Some of them are closer to 50-50. But there is zero reports that I've seen where nurture was more important than nature when they took a scientific measurement to it. If you have any interest at all in this kind of stuff, one of my favorite books I've ever read is this one called The Gene. I'm not going to try to say the author's name out of respect. One of my favorite books I've ever read. It goes into the history of genetics, what we're learning, but my favorite part was when they got into twins. So when you're trying to decide, okay, what is more important, nature or nurture? When you study identical twins, you have two people that have, again, similarities. It's not exact, but it's more than just a random two people together. So they've studied identical twins, and they've seen very high correlations between their health outcomes, diseases, especially mental disorders. Like if one twin has schizophrenia, it's very, very likely the other twin will have it as well. Now, they showed that as they grew older, the environment became more important. So the genetics weren't as important because over 70 years, if someone lived in the sun all day and someone didn't live in the sun all day, obviously there's going to be different rates of something like skin cancer. So environment became more important as I grew older. But my favorite part of the whole book is where they found 700 identical twins. So a researcher said to themselves, okay, well, the problem is if we have two twins, they grew up in the same household and they had the same stimulus and the same learning and teaching structure. So they went out and they found 700 identical twins that were separated at birth. Phenomenal. And raised in completely different households in completely different areas of the country and in the world. Phenomenal. And they still found high correlations between things like athletics, athletic ability, things like what job they ended up going into. And my favorite part of the story was the gym phenomenon. They found two twins, separated at birth. Neither knew that they had a twin brother. Both of the gyms were accountants. Both of them were the same height, the same build. Both of them were married with kids. Both of them were married to a lady named Linda. Both of them had a dog that was a basset hound, I believe. And both of them named their basset hound, I can't remember the name. That's spooky. That is just spooky. That genetics could play so much in a role. Now again, I know that's a crazy story, but it's just to get you thinking that your genetics have absolutely 100% played a role in where you are today. The professions you've chosen through your life are because of your genetics. Whether you're outgoing or shy is your genetics. You can't get away from it. You can't get away from it. So between who you are and then the lessons you've learned in life, we all get into the point where we have habits. And there are good habits and there are bad habits. The only way to change these habits is to accept it. To understand, because again, if you think that, I just need to be more disciplined, you don't understand that you are not making the decision. You have a program running inside you that has already made the decision. So if you want to change that behavior, you need to change the program. It's not about making a decision. It's about understanding there's a program running in your mind and then reprogramming your brain. So this, before you can make any sort of change whatsoever in your life, you need to understand that, because if you don't understand that, you'll fail, because you'll just do stuff like, I need to be more disciplined, I need to eat better, I need to go to the gym on Tuesdays. Like, that stuff, it doesn't help, it doesn't work, because you don't fix the underlying program. One of my favorite quotes is, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. I gave a speech at one of the Trader Expos a few years ago, and it's funny because I started off my speech, and I started off saying, hey everyone, we're here at this great Trader Expo, there's all this great software here, there's all this great training here, there's all this great everything here, and I said, the problem is, none of it's going to work because you suck. And I left a pause. And I could just see people like, I didn't know this was going to go this way, as a personal attack. And I said, look, I suck too. And then I started out basically at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting saying, my name is Rob, I'm a trader, I'm an overtrader, sometimes I hold my losers too long, and I started like listing out all the things that I did wrong. And then I talked about basically what we're going to be talking about behavior change. How do you change that behavior? So at this point, you should know what a habit is. You should say, oh, it's not me making that choice. It's a program that's written in my brain. I accept it. I accept that's who I am right now. I accept it's there. And if I want to change the behavior, I have to go deeper than being more disciplined. So, again, a habit is not a choice. Now look, you may have made a choice years ago, months ago, weeks ago that has created this program, but at this point, you are not making a choice. You are a robot. You are a robot enacting a program and getting a response. Half of it, at least half of it, is genetic. It's who you are, which is almost impossible to change. It's almost impossible to take someone who is an introvert and turn them into an extrovert. We're not going to try to do that. You can't change that. That's just who that person is. There were some things you were taught that caused you to have these programs. We can change those. So it's going to be a blend of accepting things we can't change and changing the things we can. And you've all heard that before. Wisdom is accepting the things you can't change and changing the things you can. That's literally what we're going to do to make changes to behavior. All right, thanks for joining me, everyone.